All right, everyone. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 4 recap. A little bit of Van Halen there for you to pay respects to the passing today of Eddie Van Halen. Not the biggest Van Halen fan myself, but maybe some of you are. And it's always fair and proper to pay respects to people whenever they leave the world here. So a little bit of that. Hopefully the sound came through okay. I don't know why it seems I was trying different positions with the phone to play the song, figuring out where the microphones are on the computer here. It seems like it always did the same thing no matter where I was holding it. Started out okay, but then kind of faded out. Hopefully it came back there. I don't feel like going back and redoing it over and over again to figure out what exactly is going on. So hopefully we got through. It was only a 90-second song, so I figured might as well just play the whole thing there for you guys. Anyway, week 4 is in the books. Another good week. Not a couple injuries, nothing. No, I don't want to say nothing too severe, but a couple people taking some hits this week. We had one team, unfortunately, who was going to be 0-4. No matter what happened, we're going to have one team 0-4. Unfortunately for the Hillbillies on PCP, they are that team. Didn't quite get his 190 this week. If he would have, that would have changed the results. But we will get into that as we move forward. Really, the only thing I think that there is to talk about was all the COVID situations that popped up over this past week. I thought we handled it pretty smoothly, as best we could. Keep in mind that a lot of these things, we are just kind of trying to handle them as they come up. I think sort of basically the Cam Newton situation is what we prepared for and kind of expected, that he was given the COVID tag. Justin is permitted to put Cam Newton in one of his IR spots if he so chooses. I believe Adam Humphries is the only other person who's been given of fantasy relevance who has been given that tag. So Jim, if he wants to put Adam Humphries in there, as long as he has that COVID-19 tag, you are welcome to do that in one of your IR spots there. I know you already have 2 of yours filled for regular injuries, so this one you are permitted, in this case, to add him there. But I think we didn't exactly predict or anticipate the actually canceling of entire games thanks to COVID outbreaks here with the Steelers and the Titans there. I think the big difference here is that the Titans had they had like an actual outbreak, not just an instance or two, like Cam Newton for the Patriots there with further testing. So over the course of the week, Tennessee kept having more people turn up positive. So it was more of an outbreak, not just like an isolated incident there. So I think that was part of the problem for the NFL there. And obviously they dealt with it by moving the Steelers. So they canceled the Steelers-Titans game, moved their game to, I think, week 8, and switched the bye weeks around for Baltimore. And they're going to play the Steelers, I think, a week early, and then get their bye week or something like that. And then the Titans and Steelers will play in week 8. And they made week 4, as you all know, the bye week for the Steelers and Titans. I don't know why there's quite such an uproar about a week 4 bye, because I'm pretty sure that I read somewhere that week 4 byes have been taking place pretty much every year. I don't think they happened last year, but there's only been like 2 cases in pretty much the entire history of Tonto's where there wasn't teams with week 4 byes. So I don't really know why it was such an uproar about that. Having week 4, I guess, just seems early, but it's a pretty common thing. So I don't really know what that was about. But anyway, Then obviously there was the Patriots Chiefs game. Almost had a problem with the Lions and Saints game. Um, so really, I think we kind of handled it as best we could. I know they had a vote there in the Line app, but I really just think that the simplest and most common sense way to approach it is, I know some people wanted to argue that it's just like an injury with your player, that if the game gets canceled, that's the risk you take. Um, Personally, just in this situation with COVID, I don't agree that that's exactly the case. I think we should make and do what we did and make the exception there for those cases. I think there's no reason, like, for example, even though it didn't happen, um, very easily, sometime yesterday, maybe afternoon, somebody in Kansas City's organization tests positive, and they possibly can't just cancel the game. And who knows when they would move it to, what they would do with it. Um, but in that situation, I think it's unfair to punish the people who are being, the game getting canceled is a surprise, and it's nobody's fault. It's not your fault. It's not like when you start and you leave an injured player in your lineup, taking the risk that they're going to perform as they should despite an injury, or maybe you're hoping that they play and then maybe they end up not playing at all, or they end up maybe being a decoy, not really doing too much. That's a personal risk that you take yourself, um, due to your player being injured. That's a thing that you're aware of. You know about it. You are actively taking the risk upon yourself. I think that just the whole COVID situation where entire games getting canceled and all of your players, I think it's completely, entirely fair to handle this situation as we did, where if it's a possibility that your game is going to get canceled, um, you can declare players that, as long as it was in time, so obviously you don't go back and say, well, I would have picked, you pick a player off your bench who did really well and say, well, that's who I would have started if the game would have, um, for example, if, one of your if the Chiefs game was canceled, um, you couldn't say then, well, this is the player that I would have started by, because you could go back and pick a player from your roster who did really well and say, well, I would have started this person, and you know what I'm talking about. Obviously, that's going over the line. We're not going to allow people to do that, but I think it's in this situation. Unlike the Chiefs or the Steelers game, not every situation is going to be remedied so easily as they were able to do with the bye weeks and the Steelers, Titans, Ravens stuff. Who knows what they would have done again if they would have ended up having to cancel the Patriots Chiefs game there. So I think as long as you declare players beforehand that in the case of the game getting canceled, this is who I would start. I think it's perfectly legitimate in the case of the COVID stuff in the year of this pandemic thing, that we allow that to happen, where you could keep, like, I kept Patrick Mahomes in my lineup, Gags kept Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in his lineup, fully expecting that the game was going to be played, knowing it was a possibility that it wouldn't be. I think if it's an individual player, that's how we've always done it. You're on your own in those situations there, and if your player doesn't play, it's up to you to either take the zero or scramble to find somebody else to put in your lineup there. And we will continue to do that in the future. I think this is hopefully this is a one-time thing, a one-season thing, and I believe that the way we handled it is the best and fairest for everybody involved. I see no reason why you shouldn't play your players when you're expecting that the game is going to get played, barring some sort of uncertain and surprise incident there. So that's the biggest thing from week 4 that we kind of had to deal with. Hope we will see. I would imagine situations will be similar in the upcoming weeks. But I also said, like I said on the lineup too, I would imagine that NFL brass was livid last week, and they will be cracking down hard on NFL teams and owners to enforce those prevention methods and rules. So hopefully this week will be a one-time thing, and we won't have to deal with this on a week-to-week basis. But I think going forward, we will probably handle it the same way that it was done with both of these games this week here. So based on what the NFL does is what we will base our decisions going forward on if you end up having bye weeks, things like that. So be prepared. Have people, make sure you have adequate roster backups on your roster there for these unknown situations. Unfortunately, some people, have already said and made their voices heard once more that they don't like having these shorter benches. I completely agree about that. Not liking that, and it definitely makes situations like this a little bit trickier for people to handle. For example, Jay, by no fault of his own, was barely able to put a lineup together. And Brian, by no fault of his own, had no defense to play, so he was forced to pick up one and throw them in there. He had to pick up. I think he ended up picking up a quarterback, even though I'm pretty sure Roethlisberger was not the only quarterback on your roster at the time. So, but if the Steelers game had been played still, you would have been everything would have been okay. I think you could have kept those players in your lineup let's say the Steelers, if they had moved the game to Monday like they did the other games, that would have been fine. We would have been able to do the same as we did for the Patriots-Chiefs there. So we will handle this on a week-to-week basis as it comes up, but hopefully for the most part things will be handled in essentially the same manner that we did the Patriots-Chiefs game. So again, I don't know what would actually happen if the Chiefs game had been canceled, where they would move things. I'm sure it complicates a lot of things. And so, the best I can really tell you is we will deal with these situations as the best we can when or if they come up. So, you get it. I don't need to keep harping on about it. So, let's get into the Week 4 matchups. And as always, we start with the defending champion, the previously undefeated defending champion. He was from Gags to Riches. He was going up against the surging Dub C Hooligans this week. And the Dub C Hooligans pick up the victory, 185 even to 160.1. For Dub C, we have Russell Wilson goes for 50.5. His 3 receivers, Allen Robinson, Julio Jones, and Crowder. Allen Robinson, 23, Julio, 7, and Crowder, 17.5. I believe Julio Jones looks like he re-aggravated his hamstring injury a little bit there in that game. Had a couple of short catches early on. It was in and out of the game. Looked to be grimacing going into the locker room at halftime there. And I guess he never came out of the locker room. They declared him out. So hopefully it's not too severe with his re-aggravating that hamstring injury. But the funny thing about that situation is, they said he was going to be fine. He was okay. Devontae Adams, same kind of situation with a hamstring, coming back from a hamstring injury. I think Monday morning he complained on Twitter that he wasn't going to be he complained without complaining that he wasn't going to be playing in the game Monday night there, that's saying that other people know his body better than he does and things like that. But I mean, why would Green Bay rush him back even if they thought he was okay? They have a bye week next week, and they probably thought that they would be able to beat the Falcons without him. So I completely understand why they did that. It makes total sense to me that you don't want to rush somebody back from an injury like that, especially when you have a week off next week. So why not give him the extra 10 days or 10 to 14 days of recovery time? Make sure he's healthy, have him there and out there on the field for you for the rest of the season. It's a long ways to go. So, and obviously the Julio Jones case, getting a little sidetracked here, but it's an obvious example. Here's a prime example right in front of you of why you shouldn't have played in that game last night there. So why take that risk? Which perhaps the Falcons taking that risk and having this happen to Julio just shows the contrast between the situations for the two franchises there. But anyway, Dub C, let's see, his running backs, Robinson and Edwards-Helaire, 14.7, 12.1 respectively. Schultz, his tight end, goes for 17. Mike Davis, again in the flex, another 22 points for him. Enjoy that, Kevin, while it lasts until McCaffrey comes back. You got Sly, your kicker, about 5.5 points. And then the San Francisco defense actually lost at Philadelphia there. Maybe a bit, kind of bittersweet moment for the Dub C hooligans. Yahoo says 12. The actual score must have been 15 based on your point total there. But this week, 185 was enough to get past Gags to Riches and give him his first loss of the season. Deshaun Watson goes for just under 47. Cooper Kupp, Robbie Anderson, and Tyreek Hill, 17.5, 17.9, 16.5 respectively. Running backs, Montgomery goes for 10.5. Gaskin goes for just over 9. Travis Kelce, an even 10 points. McKinnon in the flex, 20, pretty much the same score, a little bit higher, half a point higher than Davis there, 22.7 for him. But again, we will see how long McKinnon is quite as fantasy relevant with the return of Mostert coming soon. Tevin Coleman, I believe, is on IR, so he might be a little bit longer there, so we'll see what happens with that situation. But hey, enjoy it while it lasts and try to get anything you can do to get a win, especially early here in the season, is absolutely worth any investment that you have had to make to get those guys. So Tucker, your kicker, goes for about 8.5 points. And then the Arizona defense, they actually got handled pretty well by Carolina. Yahoo says 3. And you actually, I believe they actually got 0, I want to say, because we actually had to knock some points off of your score there. Your final score is lower than what Yahoo says it was supposed to be. So I think because they lost the game, I think the 3 would be correct. If it wasn't for the -3 we give you for losing. So I believe Arizona actually got you 0. The Chargers actually started off pretty well. I think their touchdown was the long touchdown. That would have been 9 points. It just had a turnover there. I don't think they would have gotten you enough points. You would have needed, 25 points to get a victory here. I don't believe that would have been enough from the Chargers defense because they started off good, but they ended up giving up a ton of yards and points there, and they lost the game. So it would not have mattered which defense you started in this matchup. Taking a quick look at your bench here, Gags, and I really don't think there was anything you could have done differently to affect the outcome of this matchup here. Can't win them all, but as much as we would like to. So still 3-1, nothing to hang your head about. So with this victory, Dub C Hooligans moves to 3-1 and drops Gags to 3-1. And he actually jumps ahead of Gags to Riches. He is in 3rd place, while Gags is in 4th place. All right, let's go straight down the line. We have Springfield Isotopes going up against Disco this week. Isotopes were down going into Monday night. Let's check here. Let's see. About 62 points. Disco was finished after Sunday. The Isotopes had Mahomes, Ridley, Valdez-Scantling, and Aaron Jones left to go. Said needing 62 points, and they got about 73, despite Calvin Ridley getting that 0 there. And it was enough to sneak past Disco this week. The Isotopes score 157.1 to Disco 146.5. Mahomes goes for 41.5, said Calvin Ridley 0. Will Fuller 22.8, Scantling 8.5. Running backs Jones and Hines. 22 for Jones, 6.2 for Hines, 8.5 for Fant. Kamara in the flex just under 21. Suckup, the kicker from Tampa Bay, goes for about 6.5. And then the Buffalo Bills defense, Yahoo says 11. I believe the actual score was 20. So despite that 0, enough to get past the Disco this week. He has Burrow actually outscore Mahomes, goes for 45.1. His 3 receivers, Galladay, Cooks, and A.J. Green. Galladay 16.2, but unfortunately another 0 for a wide receiver in this matchup. Brandon Cooks goes for 0, and A.J. Green only goes for 1.3. So a lot of back and forth in this matchup. So again, Burrow outscored the Isotopes, Mahomes there. But unfortunately for Disco, his 3 receivers combined were outscored by Will Fuller himself there. Then we had Miles Sanders. He went for 9.5. Taylor has been lined up here opposite of Hines. He wins that matchup. He goes for 8.9. Waller goes for 15.8. Zeke in the flex, 20.5. Dan Bailey, the kicker, he goes for about 6.5. And then Tampa Bay defense, Yahoo says 11. I believe the actual score might have been also 20 there. Maybe 22, 23, something like that. Maybe to bump you, might have been 23 to bump you up about 12 points there. But not enough to get past the Isotopes this week. 2 scores that could go either way. Disco has actually been pretty consistent this year so far in 4 weeks. Weeks 1 and 2, as I'm sure he knows, he scored exactly 150 point something. So this week 146. So right around that 150 mark in 3 of your 4 matchups, and you are 1 and 2 in those 150 point situations there. Only other thing, real quick here, just kind of funny that I was watching during the week. That you kept moving. You started Brandon Cooks across from Will Fuller. Started Taylor across from Hines. I had Hines in the flex for a while. Moved him up to running back and actually moved Kamara to the flex Saturday night because I was reading all the COVID stuff going on with possibly with the Saints there. So I moved Kamara down to the flex just in case I was going to have to put someone else in there. Wanted more options. Instead of being stuck with Kamara in one of the running back spots there. So that's why I moved him down to the flex. So, of course, Taylor was moved from the flex up across from Hines there in the lineup there. So just a little eccentric, maybe tick there for Disco, whatever he was doing there. Just I see what you're doing. Not making an opinion one way or the other, just kind of interesting to me the way that unfolded there. So I said moving Taylor and Cooks there, so they were across from the teammates there. So just a little interesting tidbit to point out there. But anyway, With this victory, the Isotopes stay undefeated. They are 4-0 in first place. Disco, he falls to 2-2. He is in 7th place. And also, unfortunately, with that 146, because people with lower scores than you this week, there was nobody with a lower score than you. You actually are eliminated from the knockout pool. If you had defeated the Isotopes this week, I believe, based on the teams that are already eliminated from the knockout pool, it would have been the Isotopes who would have been knocked out this week. But unfortunately for Disco, they are eliminated after 4 weeks here. Next up, Saquon It Ain't So versus Possum Magic. Saquon Ain't So gets the victory here. Under 200 points for him this week. 188.25 for him, and Possum Magic goes for 169.4. Dak Prescott goes for another 87 points, basically carrying Saquon It Ain't So on his back this year. I don't know how long this can hold up. The last 3 weeks, Dak has gone for 83, 72, and 87. They keep getting into these. I did not think it was going to happen against Cleveland, where they keep getting into these way behind situations, and thus Dak Prescott is throwing the entire second half of the game, most of the game, playing catch up, padding his stats. 41 completions in this game. Unfortunately, he's got the players around him that he is able to do that. But just a matter of how long are these game scripts going to keep going that way. I wouldn't count on 87 points being the norm many other weeks this season. Maybe it will be. Maybe I'm completely wrong. And it would be absolutely crazy if that is what happens. But because I think the Cowboys' defense right now just is that bad. So hopefully they can get things squared away. Creating unrealistic expectations is what Dak Prescott is doing right now for Saquon It Ain't So, because he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other players have single-digit scores, a 10, 2 10s here, and some teens. So you only scored 100, you got 188. 88 of those came from Dak Prescott himself. So your other 9 roster spots only contributed 100 points there. So that is about, obviously, 11 points or so. An average of 11 points from all the rest of your players each there, which isn't, quite often is not going to get the job done, to be frank with you. But anyway, let's go down your lineup. Edelman goes for 6.5. Devontae Parker, 21. Jarvis Landry actually throws a touchdown pass in this game. That counts for you now. 16.65. Running backs, Henderson and Ingram Jr. and Ingram II. 4.8, 10.7. Mo Ali Cox goes for 8.3. Is that his first name? Mo, yes it is. Golden Tate in the flex, he goes for 6. Lutz goes for 5, and not exactly 5. And then the Indianapolis Colts defense, Yahoo says 10. Looks like the actual score was about 22 for you. But again, as we know, Saquon It Ain't So had to kind of throw the lineup together here. No Juju, no James Conner, no Jonnu Smith this week with the surprise bye week. But the good news is you got to win. And you will have those guys, hopefully, for the rest of the season, since their bye week is now complete there. So, Saquon Ain't So going to be a tough competitor going forward here, with or without Dak Prescott scoring 87 points a week. But yeah, it was enough to get past Possum Magic, who still puts up a decent score and manages to lose again this week. Unfortunately for him, 40.5 for Stafford. Receivers, McLaurin, Lockett, and Diggs. McLaurin, 28.1, 5.9 for Lockett. Diggs, 17.5. Running backs, Carson and Gordon. Two good scores here, exactly 25 for Carson and 28.8 for Melvin Gordon in the losing effort here. Hayden Hurst goes for 9 points, just over 9. In the flex, Marvin Jones, only 1.9. Gonzalez, your kicker from Arizona, only 3 points here. And kind of a surprising move to me, you went with the Seattle Seahawks defense against Miami. A West Coast team traveling to the East Coast, playing a 1 o'clock game. As good as Seattle is, that's always a little bit of a tricky situation, especially since you knew, I would think beforehand, that the Kansas City Chiefs is your other defense. You knew Cam Newton was going to be out. It was in Kansas City. I know they're playing New England, but they were getting Brian Hoyer or Stidham, was that his name? Which ended up, possibly ended up happening. But yeah, why you chose to sit the Chiefs defense? And of course, it's easy for me to sit here in hindsight and say that's what I would have done, and which is knowing full well what the outcome is. But having them sit at home in a game where you already knew Cam Newton wasn't going to play, and Brian Hoyer was going to start. If I've got a defense playing against Brian Hoyer, Fitzpatrick, he's all. I mean, I'm not saying that it's an easy choice here, but you could just easily see Ryan Fitzpatrick going out, tanking and throwing 5 interceptions in a game, as he is known to do. But personally, in the situation, I would have, knowing Brian Hoyer was starting that game, would have jumped on the opportunity to play the Chiefs defense in this matchup. And it probably would have changed the outcome here. A 19-point margin here. Said Seattle, looks like they got you 16. So you would have needed, 16 and 18 is 34. So you would have needed that, at least 34 from the Chiefs defense. Yahoo says 26 plus the win, so that's 29 points right there. I'm guessing you would have got it from the yardage, those extra points there. So probably would have been a very narrow margin, but I think Pasta Magic said if you had made that choice, could have gotten a victory here over Saquon, I think so. But again, I'm not saying that I know what the right call is before the game. It's easy to sit here and say what you should have done, but I'm also analyzing the results here, so keep in mind, just saying that this is what I see. And actually, it's because in our other league, our Rizzo Fantasy League, I was actually acquired the Kansas City Chiefs defense the day before they announced that Cam Newton was going to be out, because I had my other defense is the Tennessee Titans defense, so I was looking to get somebody else and ended up trading for the Chiefs defense. And then the next day, finding out Cam Newton wasn't going to be playing, so kind of lucked into that situation there. Played the Chiefs defense actually against Justin, and that was the difference maker in that matchup. If I would pick any other defense that I would have picked up, I think would not have gotten me the points to get the victory over Justin, but they were able to do it there. But you guys don't care about that anyway. So, but yeah, unfortunately for Pasta Magic, if he had played the Chiefs defense, he probably would have won this matchup. But woulda, coulda, shoulda, all doesn't matter. Now it's all speculation. Saquon at 8, so with this victory, he is now 2-2. He is in 6th place, while Pasta Magic at 1-3. In there with a whole bunch of 1-3s right now. He is in 8th place. Not too bad for 1-3, being in 8th place. Next up, Darkwing Jet against the Shawshank Athletics. Darkwing Jet, no Christian McCaffrey. Excuse me, no Christian McCaffrey, no problem. He gets the victory this week over Shawshank, moving to 3-1. Darkwing goes for 173.3. Quietly, perhaps the quietest 3-1 that we've got going in the league so far this year. Shawshank, he drops to 1-3, 151.45. For Darkwing, he's got Teddy Bridgewater in this week. He goes for exactly 54. Odell Beckham Jr. pops off for a big one this week. 3 touchdowns, 38.5 points. DJ Moore, 9 points. Robert Woods, 9.5. Kenyon Drake, 3.5. Singletary, 18.5 for the Bills there. Gesicki, only 2.5. Michael Gallup, just under 5. Crosby, about 6.5. And then the Rams defense, Yahoo says 14. Actual score must have been about 27, I'm going to guess. So pretty good score there. So you Bridgewater, Beckham Jr., Singletary has a good score, and your defense shows up, carries you. The rest of those were some single-digit scores there. But enough to get past Shawshank this week, as he has Gardner Minshew. Practically the same score as Bridgewater here. 53.5 to 54 there. His receivers, T.Y. Hilton, Greg Ward, I think, from the Eagles, and John Brown. T.Y. goes for 6, Ward goes for 7.5, Brown goes for just over 8. Todd Gurley, 19.3, Devontae Freeman, 10.8. Mark Andrews, 2 touchdowns this week, 20.5 points. Big problem here, though. Chubb, in your flex, he gets you 4.5 points before going out with his MCL injury. He is now on IR and is expected to be out a month or so. So, problems there for Shawshank. As soon as he trades for Chubb and gets him back, he loses him again. So you had him, you lost him, you got him back, you lost him again. You'll get him back again. So we'll see what happens going forward there. Prater, your kicker, goes for 3. And the Saints defense, Yahoo says 6. Actual score must have been closer to 18 or so there. But said even though there were similar quarterback scores, probably the big difference here was Odell Beckham Jr. getting 38.5 points there all by himself. Otherwise, the scores are pretty similar up and down your lineups here. And said it propels Darkwing Jet to the victory over Shawshank this week. Again, Darkwing moves up to 3-1. He is in 5th place, while Shawshank drops to 1-3. Unfortunately for him, he is all the way down in 11th place. All right, we already did Dub C and Gags. We got Ed Logger versus the Hillbillies on PCP. The aforementioned 0-3 versus 0-3. Somebody was going to go 0-4. I'm sure Brian Hillbillies on PCP did not think it was going to be them, because in the first 3 weeks of the season, much like Disco, Ed Logger had scored the exact same score, 137. In week 3, he was even worse with take a quick look here. Only 106 points for Ed Logger last week. I gotta go click back to the matchup here real quick. So yeah, Hillbillies on PC. As we know, Hillbillies on PCP had been have been scoring in the 190-ish point range here. So he probably thought he had a pretty good chance to take this one down. But unfortunately, Ed Logger's team shows up this week, scores 179.85, and pretty much is just barely able to squeak out a victory over Hillbillies, who scored 175.15. Lamar Jackson, he only goes for 40 points this week. His 3 receivers, Brown, Evans, and Traquan Smith, again in for the injured Michael Thomas. 12.5 for Brown. Evans goes for 25.2. And Traquan Smith, 4 catches, but 2 of them were touchdowns. So perhaps he was the difference maker in this matchup. Or else we will get to somebody here down the line. Also a difference maker. His running backs, David Johnson, 11.2. Kareem Hunt, benefiting from that Chubb injury. He goes for 19 points, scores 2 touchdowns in that game. But here, perhaps the difference maker in this matchup, Ed Logger goes back to the to his old boy, one of his keepers, Austin Hooper, his tight end. Instead of playing the guy Sample from Tennessee, or not Tennessee, Cincinnati, which he did last week, went back to Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper scored a touchdown this week. His first touchdown of the year. So yeah, in a game, let's see, the difference was about 4.5 points there. So really, a touchdown is the difference in this matchup. Whether you want to consider that, said Kareem Hunt benefiting from Chubb being out or Austin Hooper being in the lineup, because Sample's score would not have been enough to get the win. You plugged him in there, or Traquan Smith getting 2 touchdowns this week. So Isabella in the flex there, 2.5 points. McManus, well, we knew this because this was the Thursday night game. Another matchup maker in this one. Looks like he had 2 50-plus yard field goals in this one. He misses one of those field goals. You probably lose this matchup, actually. He had about 19 points there. And then you had the Denver defense. Actually, Brian ended up playing the Jets defense. So both of the Thursday night game defenses were in this matchup. Denver actually did get the win. Yahoo says 9. Probably was 15, I'm going to guess. Maybe 12 based on the scores there. So actually, even though they won the game, they actually didn't do too great. The Jets defense, even though they lost, actually had more turnovers and haven't scored a touchdown there. So the defense's scores actually ended up being pretty similar here. So for Hillbillies on PCP, let's take a look at what he had. Fitzpatrick goes for 54.5. Pretty good plug and play with no Roethlisberger here. You'll take that. Can't complain about that decision. Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, and Justin Jefferson, 14.2, 14.6, 14.3 for those guys respectively. Dalvin Cook goes for another 31.5 points, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards for him. Jacobs goes for 10.3. Hawkinson, your tight end, he catches a touchdown. Only 2 catches, but one of them is a touchdown. And he also had a 2-point conversion there. Slayton in the flex, 7.8. Zerline, your kicker, only kicks 2 PATs. Despite the Cowboys scoring 38 points, he only kicked 2 PATs in this one. I believe the Cowboys went for several 2-point conversions in that one, obviously. And then the Jets defense, as we mentioned, I believe, actually, it's unusual because Brian, we didn't have to. I'm a little bit thrown off because this doesn't happen very often, but I did not have to adjust Brian's score at all. His actual Jets defense score was 15, and your kicker did not have any fractional points here. So what Yahoo said was correct, 175.15. So Ed Logger rises up this week, says, I am still alive and kicking. Hillbillies on PCP, you are going to the bottom. And unfortunately, Hillbillies, again, he falls to 0-4, while Ed Logger moves up to 1-3 in 10th place. And Hillbillies on PCP, they drop down, unfortunately, for him to 12th place. 0-4, that means you are in a difficult situation going forward on the Hillbillies on PCP. As we all know, you 7 is the most losses you can get and still have a playoff chance. I say that because I was looking back at a couple years past just to see how things played out. And keep in mind that the Isotopes, a few years back, I actually believe it was the year that Gurley went really crazy, actually ended up being 6-7, but made that last playoff spot. And I ended up going all the way because, as I said, Gurley went crazy in the playoffs that year. So anything can happen, but obviously you're going to have to go 6-3, at least 6-3 the rest of the way, and hope that a lot of other pieces fall into place for you. But so I've been saying it every week, and that eventually things have to turn around for Hillbillies on PCP. But sorry, Brian, I'm running out of things to say to try to keep your spirits up as long as this keeps going on. But I still don't stop believing. So we will see what happens. Again, hey, just from at this point on, try to get back to 4-4 is the best you can do. Maybe 4-5, and go from there. Hope for things. Again, things can fall your way. We're going to start having bye week problems. You've got your Steelers defense the rest of the way. You got Roethlisberger the rest of the way already. So you probably shouldn't have to worry about that. Well, other teams are going to be scrambling to make bye week fills here. So, yeah, your buns are set for the rest of the year. And, yeah, so anything can happen. Perhaps I'll be sitting here next week saying the exact same thing. For your sake, I hope not. But for whoever you're playing sake, we will have to see what happens here. So, again, unfortunately, 0-4 for Hillbillies on PCP. He is on life support and is going to have to turn things around very quickly here. So, stating the obvious. But anyway, we had the last matchup. Yinzer Jags versus Mighty Midgets. Yinzer Jags gets the victory here, 221.7 versus Mighty Midgets, 171.35. Another 200-point score for Yinzer Jags this week, despite Davante Adams being out, going for 0 points. Really nothing you could have done in terms of plugging anybody else into your lineup because it was Monday night, and I believe he wasn't announced to being out until Monday morning or Monday afternoon. Not really anybody else you could have played that had been worth it there at the wide receiver position. But you had this one pretty much in hand because your score was essentially already over 200 going into the Monday night matchup, while Mighty Midgets had Matt Ryan left to play, and the margin here was 90 points, I believe. 80 points going in. So Matt Ryan, Midgets needed at least 80 or 90 points from Matt Ryan, plus you had James White going in the early Monday night game there, so didn't really need to do anything and just let it play out. Said it would have probably been the game of Matt Ryan's life had that occurred. Would have certainly been an interesting thing to talk about if that would have played out. But unfortunately for Mighty Midgets, that is not what happened. Yinzer Jags, bunch of big scores here. Josh Allen, 52.5. Adam Thielen, 26.2. Amari Cooper, again benefiting from these game scripts. 33.5 points for him on 12 catches and a touchdown. We will see probably at an unsustainable pace the Cowboys offense is on here fantasy-wise going forth, but we will see how things play out. I'm sure Matt is crossing his fingers and hoping for things not to change here, but it's really hard to imagine that they will keep doing this on a week-to-week basis here. So, but again, win's a win. Take whatever you can get. So Davante Adams gets that 0. Jeff Wilson goes for only 2.9. James White, 12.9. Big one here too. Kittle comes back from his injury, goes off with the backup quarterbacks for San Francisco there. He goes for 15 catches, 180 yards, and a touchdown. 43.1 points for Kittle this week. Tyler Boyd, 16.5. Blankenship picked him up to make sure you had a kicker. Didn't want to risk it with Butker there. Actually, looks like 1, 2, 3. He had at least 4 field goals in this matchup. He got you about 14 points there. So a good, solid pickup there. Baltimore Ravens defense. Let's see. Yahoo says 12. Actual score must have been about 21. But yeah, Allen goes for 50. Cooper 33. Kittle's 43. Enough to get you the big score over 200, despite that 0, and get you past Mighty Midgets this week. Said Matt Ryan needed about 100 points. He got you 43.25. Hopkins, Lamb, and Cobb, 11 for Hopkins. 2 Cowboys receivers opposite each other here in that matchup. Very respectable 25.2. 2 touchdowns for Lamb in this one, but still said less than Cooper here. Randall Cobb, 5.6. Joe Mixon, Mixon actually pops off this week against Jacksonville. He scores 3 touchdowns, over 150 rushing yards. He gets you 45.1. Austin Eckler, unfortunately, he goes down after only 2.5 points. I believe suffering a pretty significant hamstring injury. It still says doubtful here. I'm surprised he is not listed. I guess they must not have put him on the short-term IR yet. Really doesn't matter for Mighty Midgets because he's already got Cortland Sutton and Dallas Goedert in his IR spots here, so it doesn't really matter what they do there. But unfortunately, said Mighty Midgets, losing one of your key pieces, falling to 1-3. Tough, unfortunate timing for that when you need to start turning things around and racking up some W's here. So we will see what you are able to do going forward. Tight end, Ertz goes for 7. Gibson, the running back from Washington in the flex, just under 23 points. Robbie Gould goes for 2, and then the Bears defense goes for, actually, I think the Mighty Midget score did not need to get adjusted either. 171.35. Yeah, so the actual score is what Yahoo says, 7 points for your defense there. But yeah, not too much you can do when your opponent has a couple players who pop off for 30, 40 points who aren't quarterbacks here. So, said unfortunately for Mighty Midgets, said lost Eckler for a while. We'll see what you're able to do there. Been a rough season so far for Mighty Midgets. Said again, again, he's got Humphreys out with COVID. You weren't really using him much anyway. But said Goedert and Sutton already on IR spots here for you. Sutton done for the year. Goedert temporarily. You'll be able to bring him back before too long. But yeah. I think Jim pointed out, all 3 of his keepers for this year are currently out. So you keep those guys because you expect big numbers and good production from them. So said Mixon had some good games. Hopkins down this week, but he's been pretty consistent. Lamb has been said thriving in that Cowboys play from behind game script every week here. So he's been looking like a pretty good draft find here for you. So Gibson's been doing okay. So Matt Ryan, an off game for him. He just looked completely off in that game from the beginning here. So taking a look at him, he actually was he was down last week too, but the first 2 weeks he was well over 50. He had 70 the first week here. So expect better things from Matt Ryan in the future here. So you've still got, I know you're losing Eckler, but you still got some solid pieces there to move forward. We'll see what people do on the waiver wire here later this evening. But yeah, going to be tough. Said it's tough going forward. Just unfortunate situation here for the Mighty Midgets with injuries this year, but happens to all of us. Happens to several of us this year. Happens every year, and just unfortunate. Really, nothing you can do about it. But So they keep plugging away, and you never know what can happen on a week-to-week basis here. So with a win, Yinzer Jags, he moves up to 3-1. He's in second place, while Mighty Midgets drop to 1-3. They are in 9th place. All right, that is pretty much it. Anything else to tackle? Disco said you were eliminated this week from the knockout pool, which means the first 4 eliminations have been Saquon It Ain't So, Shawshank Athletics, Ed Lager, and Disco. So in case you were wondering, assuming any of you actually made it this far, so just take a quick peek here at the Week 5 matchups, what we've got. The Mighty Midgets just lost Eckler, going up against the Isotopes, trying to give them their first loss. Saquon versus Gags, that should be a good one. Darkwing Jut versus Yinzer Jags, two of our 3-1 teams going up against each other. One of you will get win number 4 and be well on your way towards a playoff spot, at least making a run for a playoff spot. Hillbillies trying to get that first victory this year. He is going up against Disco. We'll see if he's able to do that or not. Another good matchup, Dub C versus Shawshank. Dub C said again he's been surging past couple weeks. We'll see what happens there. Shawshank kind of been falling off, but again he lost Chubb this week, so it's going to be difficult things moving forward here. But like Kevin said, take nothing for granted on a week-to-week basis. And then finally, Ed Lager versus Possum Magic, 2 1-3 teams there. So, things to watch for. Can the Mighty Midgets give the Isotopes their first loss? And Darkwing versus Yinzer Jags, 2 3-1s there, going head-to-head. And will Hillbillies on PCP be able to get their first victory? And then Saquon versus Gags should be a good matchup here. So some interesting things to watch here in the upcoming week. We will see what happens. Looking forward to it. So that's about it. Thanks everybody for watching, listening, or whatever it is you do, assuming anybody makes it this far into the review here. So thanks for watching, listening, whatever it is. And hopefully everyone's teams and players meet or exceed expectations this week, and we avoid any significant injuries here. So, all right, guys, thank you again, and we will see you back here next week. Bye-bye.